This is Street Knowledge with Chris Graham.
Welcome to the podcast. Chris Graham and Scott German. Scott off of his summer vacation from podcasting. And we got Scott back in, and I'm back, and we're back together because it's UVA sports season, and we got football to talk about this coming weekend as Virginia football kicks off on Saturday night, 6 o'clock, with Richmond. And we started the season not that long ago with Richmond in football. It didn't go so well, so we'll hope this one goes better. Scott, we're a few days away from the opener. Your general thoughts, first off, and then we'll go through some specifics. Your general thoughts about how the preseason's gone, fall camp's gone, and getting ready for football.
Well, I'm hopeful that year 3 with Coach Mendenhall is going to be a very positive year. We hope to get that nasty taste of the Military Bowl, off of our tongues pretty quickly. It's going to be an interesting year to see how well the offense runs under a completely different type of quarterback and Perkins. And I'm also curious to see just how much, maybe you might share your thoughts, how under the microscope is Coach Mendenhall going to be? Because this is truly the first year that he's going to be under the guidance or under leadership from the new AD, Carl Williams. And we know that she was not at all happy with the performance in the Military Bowl. So, I just wonder if that burner has turned up a couple of notches since that cold day in December that we all remember too well. And how much leeway is he going to kind of establish that the ship isn't sinking, that it's at best it's still above water. So a lot of different things. It's going to be very interesting for a lot of us to see how well they play against Richmond. Can't take that for granted. Last time Richmond came into Scott Stadium, they put a thumping on us. Now, different team, a couple years ago. So, there's a lot to be seen and to be unveiled, and hopefully it gets off to a good start.
So to get us ready for this podcast, Scott and I texted earlier today talking about doing a podcast. I sat down to write a column sort of get us both ready for the podcast and then talking about the season. And I'll be honest with folks, this is some inside media kind of stuff here. I sat down with the intention of writing today a column where I would talk about 10 reasons to be excited about UVA football heading into the season, and I was planning on writing later in the week 10 reasons to be concerned about UVA football. Well, the bad news is I could not come up with 10 reasons to be excited. So I kind of melded them both together, and you'll hear some of the concerns and some of the reasons for excitement as Scott and I go through this, and I'm going to kind of take us through those 7 observations. And first, Scott, I'll go into you alluded to this, Bryce Perkins at quarterback. The question mark I had was upgrade. Is this an upgrade for UVA? And my observation is, Kirk Baker is competing for a job in the NFL with Atlanta. He's getting a lot of reps, getting a lot of game time. He got most of the second half in Atlanta's most recent preseason game. Their third of the season. And so it looks like he will get the third job and maybe even beat out Matt Shaw for the second job, perhaps, in Atlanta. So Kirk Baker was a great quarterback at the college level. He broke UVA records, etc. But I'm saying that I think Bryce Perkins is actually going to be an upgrade in this sense. Robert and I, his offense is predicated upon having a mobile quarterback. Perkins is a mobile quarterback. Opponents are going to have to be careful on the read option. Ane likes to use the read option. He likes to have the shotgun snap and fake a handoff to the running back before he starts to play. That's going to, with Perkins being mobile, Baker was not. That will open some things up. So, I don't know. I think that the offense has potential to maybe be better. Your thoughts?
If I were to list concerns and optimism, I would list Bryce Perkins is both. Very optimistic with the mobile quarterback. He's running the offense that Mendenhall and the offensive coordinator want. That's not saying that Binkert wasn't a great quarterback last year, but Binkert was not it was kind of like the coaching staff was trying to put a round peg in a square hole. Binkert's proven that he's probably more of an NFL prototype quarterback from just what you said. He's still fighting for a job in Atlanta. But at the same time, I would also be concerned about Perkins in that we don't know his arm strength. We know he's got blazing speed. Offensive line still probably a very much of a question mark for Virginia. And let's face it, he has not played against the defensive secondary the speed that he's going to see this year. Maybe not in the Richmond game, but on down the road, it's going to be the game is going to be at a much different level than he's ever faced in game type situations. So I would say he's on both sides of that ledger, concern and a hope as well.
And I'll throw in one other reason for concern is that behind Perkins, there's not a lot. Lindell Stone is the sophomore that was recruited originally by the Mike London staff. They started recruiting him years ago, and a lot of folks thought, well, that must mean he's the quarterback of the future. And then when they burned the red shirt on him last year in that Boston College game, he threw 2 interceptions. You didn't really see much of him after that. And then the staff goes out and finds a JUCO, Perkins being a junior college graduate, to take over at quarterback, hand him the ball like they did. That tells you that there's not a lot of confidence in Lindell Stone and the guys behind him. And so Perkins, with everything he might bring in terms of all those reasons for excitement, he's got to stay healthy, because if he's not healthy, boy, this gets to be a really long season for UVA football, because Lindell Stone and whoever else might be back there, they don't seem to have the confidence of the coaching staff.
No, and I think we talked about it last year when Mendenhall burned Stone's redshirt with virtually one play. That, in my opinion, that pretty much sums up where he thought Lindell Stone fit into this program, because I believe if he saw him as truly the quarterback of the future, he wouldn't have burned that red shirt. He wouldn't have burned that year of eligibility for essentially one play. But quarterbacks go down. How many teams can you say that wouldn't experience a significant drop off if they lost their starting quarterback? I mean, UVA is not the only team that would really suffer losing their starting quarterback. So, we hope and keep him upright. Mobile quarterback, it's going to be a challenge for the offensive line, certainly, to give him some protection. The other thing that I would be concerned about, too, is that I'm not certain that Virginia has really got in camp and it's tough when you basically have no confidence in your field goal kicker on that offense to go down and score. They have to take gambles. They have to run different plays on third and whatever the situation dictates. When you know you're not going to kick a field goal, it sure would be nice if our field goal accuracy improved a little bit, so that we don't have to essentially go for it on every fourth down. Instead of maybe being able to settle for 3. I'm not sure what improvement we're going to see in that aspect of the game either.
Well, yeah, missed those days of Rafael Garcia and Michael Husted, among others, just being automatic. Not only automatic from like 40 and in, but those guys would kick 50-yard field goals, and you could score any which way you wanted to. I wanted to keep it positive. Then we'll go to the Lions, because the Lions are a question mark, big question mark. But kind of flowing out from the talk about quarterback maybe being an upgrade once Perkins gets used to the speed of the game at the 1A level. The weapons that a good quarterback will have at his disposal, I think UVA's got good weapons. I mean, I think Olamide Zaccheaus, at the 85 catches from a year ago, I don't think there's any reason to expect that he'll drop off in production. He might have more production this year. Zaccheaus, a guy that lines up in the slot, but he's got the speed of a halfback. really playing that Smoke Mizell role that Mizell played in the Mike London era, as a guy playing in the slot with speed and just making it hard for matchups on the perimeter there. I think Jordan Ellis at running back, of course, last year averages 3.9 yards a carry. I don't think that's anything about him. I think that's all about the lack of line play. But I think, even with a little bit better line play, with Perkins taking the attention of defensive ends a little bit away from Ellis and having to pay a little bit of attention at least to Perkins, maybe open up some running lanes for him. I like Joe Reed and Hassis Dubois. They got speed at wideout. Evan Butts at tight end is a big guy who can catch the ball over the middle of the field. So now this is the big question mark. If the offensive line can block, you should see a more productive offense in 2018. That's the question mark, but I don't think there's any question that UVA's got some nice guys, skilled position players on offense that can do some stuff if there is opportunity to move the ball downfield.
And that offensive line is definitely, that play is going to be critical. I was looking at earlier today. I was kind of looking over the depth chart for the offensive line, and it looks like that the nose tackle is going to be a true freshman. So there's going to be a lot of inexperience on the O-lines. You'd always have to think it would have to improve over last season, but it's just going to take some time. And again, depth. That's the key. We may have some really decent players on that first team, but you can't go with that the whole game, and you certainly can't. You got to have back, you got to have depth there, and all of that late season drop for Virginia is after that Georgia Tech game, we just wore out, and that's, I think, an ongoing process with Mendenhall that fans are going to have to be a little patient with, because not only you have to get those key players that are your starters, you still got to recruit. You got to get the depth that built up. And that's something that, more than anything, was the main factor in that late season swoon that we had, especially in the Military Bowl, where we basically had no backups on the line.
Well, in the Virginia Tech game too, you could tell the game planning for both those games, Virginia Tech and Navy, was to basically, let's just do what we can do to keep Bankert from getting shellacked back in the backfield. So, ran a lot of running plays with an offensive line that can't block for runs. They ran a lot of screen passes and quick passes because they knew they couldn't block long enough. Well, let's talk more about the O-line. Talk about the depth chart, Scott. Jake Feeler was injured in preseason. It looked like he might not be back for Richmond. He is listed on the depth chart, number 1 at right guard. That's good news. R.J. Proctor not on the depth chart, not on the 2 deep, I should say. Yeah, so Proctor, the highest rated offensive lineman coming back from last year's team, not on the depth chart for the Richmond game, so that's not good. This is a young group, and defensive line too. You talked about this. The nose tackle is a true freshman. Last year we didn't really pay attention to this because I mentioned this in a column. Andrew Brown was eating up blockers in 2017, but you don't really pay attention to a nose tackle, and he played some DN too in the 3-4. You don't really pay a lot of attention to a guy who gets double teamed and triple teamed on the line because those guys don't make a lot of tackles. They don't make a lot of sacks because they're getting double and triple teamed. But in the 3-4 scheme, which is what UVA uses defensively, the front alignment, in a 3-4, those linemen are supposed to get double teamed. They're supposed to be such beasts that they get double teamed. And what that does then is allow those 4 linebackers with speed. And UVA's got talented linebackers. They got a great secondary. I think from that front line being what it is with all the issues, the 4 backers, the 4 guys you'll have in the secondary are among the best in the ACC. But if those front 3 guys aren't eating up blocks, then the offensive linemen can jump downfield and block the linebackers and get them knocked out of position. And that can create some big plays for the offense, particularly in the running game. And so Brown not being there, he's in the NFL now too. There's nobody to really replace him. Dylan Thompson. The word today from Bronco Mendenhall is that Thompson, yes, as we know from Twitter, Thompson is in Charlottesville now. He did finish up his graduation requirements at Ohio State. He's in day 2 of getting acclimated to what UVA wants. He won't be playing this weekend against Richmond. But Thompson is a guy from Ohio State that only played a couple of games there because of injuries. So all the talk about Dylan Thompson being this great player coming in, he was a great high school recruit. That was 4 or 5 years ago. There's just not a lot of guys on that defensive line. And so really it's both lines for UVA that are weak points right now. And that's the worst place to have weak points because that's where the ball game is won. You don't pay attention to it as a fan watching on TV, but the game is won in the trenches. And UVA, that's where they're weakest right now, in the trenches.
Yeah, and so real quick, watching Coach Mendenhall's press conference today on Facebook Live, he did come. The question was asked about Foxborough. I remember him responding that he had a preseason injury. I don't know what it was, but he's working his way back in practice now, and he would expect that he would be on that depth, showing up on that depth chart pretty soon, pretty early in the season. So that's good news. But if you look at, and I'm looking at it right now, it's kind of interesting. You look at the UVA depth chart on that offensive line. The left tackle, the left guard, left tackle Ryan Nelson, redshirt freshman, left guard Chris Glasser, sophomore. The center, Dylan Rainsmeyer, I hope I pronounced that right, sophomore. And then you go on the right side of the line, you got Jake Feeler, senior, right tackle Marcus Applefield, senior, tight end is Evan Butts, senior. So is that by design, Chris, or it looks like it's a little tilted there, but I guess these guys are slotted into positions that Mendenhall thinks they should be in, and regardless of experience.
Well, I'm sure some of it has to do with the way Coach Ane likes to call plays and the directions he uses for calling plays. And we as fans don't often think of this, but yeah, there guys' skill sets. I mean, we don't think there's much difference between right guard and left guard, but your quarterback being a right-handed quarterback has a factor in that. Does this indicate that we're going to see more of those read option plays with Bryce Perkins going the right side because that's where the veteran guys are? Probably so. Maybe Perkins' skill set is better, faking the handoff to the left and bolting right. So, there's probably some factors there, yeah. But I think you're right. I mean, it's unbalanced in terms of experience, and also, we just have to hope that from last year we can see more depth. I'll throw the discussion towards the Richmond area because we talked about how 2016, first game of the Bronco era, Virginia got just blitzed at home, down 30-7 in the fourth quarter, final score 37-20, not that close really is how it played. But that Richmond team was a team that eventually made a playoff run and won AA. Now that's the lower level, but they made a playoff run that year. That was a pretty good Richmond team. This year's Richmond team picked 7th in the CAA, not expected to be a playoff contender. The quarterback who threw for 337 yards and 3 touchdowns in that win over Virginia 2 years ago, Kyle Lauletta, he was a 4th-round draft pick of the New York Giants. He's gone. He's definitely got a job in the NFL, whereas Kirk Baker is competing for one. So this is a different Richmond team. It's not a team that those Richmond teams of recent vintage were championship contenders. This one's not quite that. So. So you say that, and I say that, and I guess what I'm kind of leaning towards here is, Virginia's got some issues on the lines, and they got a new quarterback, and they've got some new guys playing different positions. But this should be a Virginia win, and I guess I'd go to where you were a little earlier, Scott. If it's not a Virginia win, I think some heat gets applied early in this season because this is a game that can really get you off on the right foot, but if you don't play well and get you off on the wrong foot with Indiana, with Ohio U, Louisville in those first 4 weeks, boy, that could really set the wrong tone for this season.
Oh, absolutely. And therefore, the average fan is thinking, this is just Richmond. Well, I'm telling you, to this coaching staff and to the Bronco Mendenhall era at Virginia, this is a huge game because they cannot have happened to them Saturday night what happened 2 years ago. Now, that was 13 years ago. This Richmond team isn't the same team. They lost. You said they lost the quarterback that's now playing in the NFL for a backup with the Giants.
Yeah.
I looked on their depth chart. They returned 8 starters on defense, 6 on offense. But if this is a game that Virginia really not only has to win, but they should win, because if you're looking at the I am as we speak their depth chart. We've got them on the offensive line by about 25 to 30 pounds a man. I mean, it's no comparison. Their depth chart, they're starting linemen are averaging about 295, 300 pounds, and Virginia's guys are offensive line much bigger. So, we should be able to control that line of scrimmage. So, this is a huge game for Virginia. They have to win. I'm not going to say they have to win convincingly. I don't think the program is at that position yet where we were disappointed with a 20 to 10 win. I don't think we have to go out and win 50 to nothing, but I think it has to not only be a win, but a pretty convincing win, and that we're not sweating this game out in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, you think back to last year. So we talked about how in 2016, Richmond, of course, just blows away Virginia in the opener. Last year, Virginia opens with William & Mary, and it wasn't that convincing a win. It was still a game, not a close game, but it wasn't outside of the realm. The final score was 28-13, and I think the lead was 21-10 in the fourth quarter at one point for Virginia. So, but now part of this too is, football is also like playing poker. Virginia plays at Indiana September 8th, and of course you got to win September 1st before you play September 8th. But what a lot of coaches will do in a situation, first game of the season, especially with a new quarterback and some new guys on both sides of the ball, you'll game plan pretty conservatively. You'll say, hey, like you pointed out, Scott, Virginia's much bigger on the line than Richmond, so maybe you'll see a lot more running out of this Virginia team on Saturday. So as not to really give much for Indiana to look at on game tape. I mean, if you think you're going to win this game and you can win this game 21-10 and run for 200 yards and really limit the exposure of Bryce Perkins to getting sacked, having to read defenses too much and maybe risk an interception or two. If you play this one pretty conservatively and you win the game, that may not be the worst thing, because that way Indiana doesn't get much to look at on your game tape, and you can maybe have a little bit of advantage going into that game. That's a factor. I mean, you're playing with fire there, because you play too conservative and you might lose the game. But I think there may be some consideration as far as the game planning goes about wanting to keep it as vanilla as possible, to limit your exposure again for Perkins, and then maybe make it hard for Indiana to get much to look at.
Yeah, I understand that, but I agree to some extent. Although I believe that Mendenhall, he understands the situation he's in, the situation the program's in. There's going to be some eyes watching, and I don't know if he can really afford that luxury of saying, I'm going to play this. I'm going to use a vanilla offense because we can beat them regardless, and we don't want to show Indiana full playbook. I believe you got to go out and he's got to do whatever it is he needs to do to win that football game. And I'm not sure we're at that level that we can just tune it down a little bit, tune it down a couple of notches, and know that we'll beat Richmond. I think he's going to do whatever it takes, and if that's opening the playbook up a little more than he would normally do in game one, I'm just of the opinion that that's what's going to happen, because you can just imagine we lose to Richmond, and all of a sudden going to Indiana we're going to be an underdog regardless whether we beat Richmond or not. You could be looking at an 0-2 start, and that's a deep hole to dig out of when you're a young football team with not a lot of expectations.
Well, and I'll say the other reason you might play this one more conservatively is just that Bryce Perkins is making his first start at the 1A level, and the more you can do to keep him out of trouble, the better. From at least making decisions with the passing game standpoint, but you also got to be careful. You run him too much, you might get hurt on a running play too. That's the issue with having a mobile quarterback that you use in a running game. So we'll see how that all plays out. the last point I brought up here, Scott, in my column, and I'll throw it out here too. You're going to be there Saturday night. I won't be, actually. I won't be able to make it for the opener. At least I'll be watching on TV. But we're used to seeing half-empty houses at Scott Stadium. I'm giving the over-under, and I'm probably being generous in saying this is an over-under. Over-under for Saturday's attendance at 40,000. Are you going over or under? Well, bad news. I think what happened there was Scott's head blew up at the thought of having to say 40,000 over or under. I think what happened there most likely is we just had the call drop. But that happens sometimes. Let's see. If I can predict what Scott would say, and he'll probably call me back a little later, maybe text me when his phone gets back online, he'll probably go under. I'll go over, but I'll give it with the caveat. I'm not sure that there will actually be over 40,000 people in the stadium, but I think that's what they'll report. So we'll kind of go with that. And hopefully now we have you ready, at least getting you started to getting ready for UVA football's home opener on Saturday with Richmond. I mentioned I will not be in the stadium. I've got announcing duties, ESPN broadcast with VMI women's soccer on Saturday, but Scott will be there. He'll be leading our live blog. I'll try to join in when my soccer game is over. But the game is at 6 o'clock. UVA in Richmond. I think it's on ESPN3. We'll have the listings on our website, AugustaFreePress.com, as we get them from UVA Sports, get all the links, everything else you'll need. But that's a 6 o'clock kickoff. Scott and I will get together afterwards. We'll do a podcast by phone and kind of break things down. I'll have a post-game column. Scott will do a post-game story. We'll do news and notes, inside the numbers, et cetera, et cetera. But in the meantime, leading up to game day, we've got, in fact, as I'm sitting here right now and getting ready to finish up this podcast, I've got the weekly press conference transcript for Bronco Mendenhall's talk with reporters today. We'll share the transcript in its entirety. Then we'll kind of break it down as well, kind of give you the news and notes, the highlights, that kind of thing. And we'll keep up. We'll give you the depth chart for the week, and we'll give you more news and notes later in the week too. So a lot of stuff coming up with UVA football as the season gets ready to kick off on Saturday night, week 1, and the Who's hosting the Spiders in a matchup that will, from UVA fan standpoint, will hope it goes the right way. For Scott German and his phone, and for Chris Graham, of course, Augusta Free Press, signing off. Wahoo-wah.